So thanks, Alex, for coming on. Appreciate it. You sort of, in a way, epitomise what we're trying to do with giving the game away. You've obviously been through a lot in your career, demonstrated a lot of resilience, a lot of mental strength, been really open about mental health, and you've had, obviously, aside from that as well, such a great career. So thanks for coming on, mate. And thanks for being a part of us doing it in the studio for the first time. It's obviously...
Yeah, it's a cool space.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Very excited.
It's so good not having to do it over Zoom. Like,
yeah.
All the ones we've done before over Zoom, we're just getting a bit fed up of it, always interrupting each other, and there's a bit of a delay and stuff. So nice doing it in person. So yeah, thanks for coming down.
No, it's all good. I'm very excited to be here. Like I say, a very cool space. Very professional setup.
Yeah. We're gonna have to live up to that.
Yeah, let's hope the content lives up to the space we're in.
It does feel weird having all this gear here, like all these cameras and lights and stuff. It doesn't feel natural.
It's something about the light that made it seem like really professional. I don't know why. It's just that light.
It's kind of Hollywood.
Right, sweet. So if we just start with lockdowns, obviously a normal place to start. You had sort of a busier lockdown than most because you obviously did the Shave, Donate, Nominate initiative. So that must have been quite overwhelming to like get the support you had for that.
Yeah, it was pretty mad. I think, I've done quite a few charity campaigns with the Sevens team over the time. Obviously, quite one of the natural ones with rugby players is Movember. Like everyone usually gets involved with that. You see lads out on the pitch with stupid tashes and beards and whatnot. So that's a cool one that we've done before. But I don't know, I've just always recognised that we as athletes and sports people have a good platform, like with our social media following, and we can have an impact on like the wider community. And so I thought, I want to do something sort of better with my time during lockdown, aside from just keeping fit with exercise and activity, and started to think of ideas of how can support obviously the efforts that people were doing during the coronavirus pandemic, and came up with this idea of Shave, Donate, Nominate on Instagram, which is kind of like a hashtag trend that I was trying to get started. Essentially, shave your head, donate some money to the NHS appeal, which we set up a fundraising page through Virgin Money, and then nominate some mates to do it, and it blew up. I felt like a bit of a social media influencer for a little bit. Like honestly, I was like spending too much time on my phone. Yeah, it was just like the hype was crazy around it, but it was wicked. Like to see that response, to see, like the general public getting involved, random people messaging me being like, "Thanks for starting this. It's a really cool thing you've done," and yeah, to have that kind of really positive impact was amazing. And I think we raised just over £26,000 in the end, which
that's crazy.
Wasn't expecting to do anything like that. I was thinking, I don't know, £5 would be decent.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I think what you say about sports people having a platform to impact change is so true. And you see people like Marcus Rashford has been doing stuff over lockdown as well, which was great, and Raheem Sterling and yourself, and you're among that group.
Well, I wouldn't put myself up there with them, but like. Yeah, similarly, obviously, I follow American sports quite a lot, and LeBron James is obviously, he set up that his own school in Ohio, back in Cleveland, I think, and obviously there's all sorts of like superstars like him, which I don't put myself in that same category, but like, I just thought we've got platforms to use, like why not use it for better and for good, so yeah, it was pretty cool.
You had a load of sportsmen like jump on it as well, didn't you? So
like
Sam Billings.
Sam Billings, who I went to uni with at Loughborough, and I just reached out to people, obviously, because that's the way to do it. And sports got such a good network, and obviously when you're doing something like that, usually people are more than happy to support what you're up to. And yes, I got him, and then like Rory McConaughey, who's now at Bath, ex England Sevens teammate of mine, and Sonny Webster, who was a Bristol Team GB weightlifter, who's now out in Australia. He got involved, so. Yeah, it was wicked, and we even got some women involved in the end. Like that's a good aspect. Yeah, that's big. Like obviously for a bloke to shave his head, it's just like cool. Yeah. It'll grow back in a couple of months, but for some women to do that, it's like
it's a big commitment.
Big commitment, exactly. So that was really cool.
Yeah. You've also another thing you've been doing over lockdown. I read is that you've been reading a lot of poetry. Has that been to sort of help cope with the stressful situation that has been the pandemic?
Yeah. I guess I wasn't particularly committed to my poetry or like English at school, but I think like having gone through life and experienced setbacks and just like, I guess, life experiences, I've just opened myself up more to different avenues of like learning, and poetry is kind of one of those ones that obviously the poems can be quite subjective, and you can interpret them however you want as the reader. So I quite like that. It's a bit more, I guess you could say, spiritual, but yeah, it's a good way just to like switch off in the mornings, or like if you're having a bit of a rough day, like take your mind away from something, bit of escapism. So, and I found these 2 books by William Seagar. There's like a volume 1, volume 2, and they've kind of got different chapters and fun. Oh, it's called the Poetry Pharmacy. So actually, the poems have been used to prescribe to people with like certain conditions. Some might be like mental health or depression. So that was I felt relevant to some of the things I've learned from as well. So yeah, pretty good actually. So check them out.
It's definitely like lockdown's given that opportunity to get into those sort of things that before you just never would have done.
Yeah,
like this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's right about lockdown. People obviously recognise like we're never probably going to have these sorts of times again where you've just got free time essentially, especially if you're on furlough. So why not? I mean, obviously you've got to sometimes take the break and use it for kind of doing nothing, but at the same time it is an opportunity to explore some different interests. So poetry, yeah, it's new to me, but it's been quite cool. Yeah.
And then other than that, what else have you been doing in lockdown? I heard you say your mate has a gym, so
yeah, got a friend down in just down in the city centre by Temple Meads, Higher, Bristol.
Pretty ideal.
Yeah, so he was very kind to lend me some weights during lockdown, so I managed to get a little setup at home, like pulled some old shelves out of the garage and set them up, and they're not really standing anymore, like dents in them where I've just dropped the weights, and Mum's not too happy about that. But yeah, really lucky that he lent me some, so I've been trying to keep fit and active obviously as much as possible. Because
most people over lockdown have let themselves go. So
yeah.
You've done well.
I mean, I've enjoyed lockdown as well. Like my sister was baking cakes constantly, like dropping them off. So I had to get that balance between doing some exercise and then enjoying some cake afterwards. But
there's a phase everyone was just making banana bread. There was like a constant supply of
banana bread and sourdough, wasn't it? Yeah, that was the craze. So yeah, I've been relatively busy, but at the same time, like I said a minute ago, I've also enjoyed just like doing nothing.
Yeah.
Because for the past 6-7 years being involved in professional rugby, it's just been like go, performance mindset.
Yeah.
Whereas for once, it was kind of like, it was pretty obvious that rugby wasn't returning soon. So just take your foot off the gas a bit and just enjoy doing exercise or doing nothing more out of pleasure than worrying about competition or having to go to the next tournament. So that's been really nice to switch off and be back in Bristol, which I don't get to do very often. Come back, spend some time with Mum and my sister, who obviously I don't see often, being away so much. So yeah, there's definitely, like as they say, some silver linings to it all.
Yeah, especially sevens obviously, because you're literally going from one place to the other, tournament to tournament. Must be nice just to chill out in Bristol for a bit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just constantly kind of jet setting from one place to the next, kind of living out of a suitcase essentially, and come back and like remember why I love Bristol so much, because just lived here all my life and it's a cool city. So
no, I've definitely felt that, like when people have come back and we're all in Bristol together, like all mates and stuff, everyone realises how sick Bristol actually is. Do you know what I mean? Like everyone like goes to London at one point and they've come back, they're realising actually Bristol's pretty good. Yeah,
I think like I've got a lot of mates in London, and it's not necessarily, I don't really miss London as much. I miss just more the people. So like, because Bristol, I feel like has just got just as much to offer. It's just the network of people. If I could pick them up and put them anywhere, I'm still gonna have a good time. It's not necessarily about the place; it's more about the people that are involved. So it's always good to come back, like connect with people, meet some new faces, do some new challenges and stuff. So it's just open up to like new opportunities.
And do you know when you're going to be back playing rugby again?
Sadly not. No, not for the time being. Continuing keeping myself fit and active. Obviously, there's still some goals to hopefully be achieved, like with Tokyo being shifted by a year and stuff. But yeah, for the time being, kind of rugby's on pause, but keeping the faith.
So what's obviously that recent announcement by the RFU? What exactly sort of are the alternatives that can be done at this point? So they're just cutting funding for sevens, aren't they? The RFU.
So obviously, like the whole world is having financial difficulty, and the RFU are part of that, and they're worried about their financial situation. So it's a real change in like direction and like uncertainty. But I guess the goal still remains the same of going to Tokyo 2021. Can't get it out. So I'm not used to saying it. Next year. So because Team GB have got a team, so they're going to have to send some squad. So it's about trying to stay motivated by that, whilst also balancing, like trying to get some money in and keeping fit and playing rugby and just staying ready. So it's a tricky one at the moment, because obviously the 15s clubs are worried about their own money as well. So we have to try and sell ourselves cheap, I guess.
So would you consider making the jump to 15s potentially?
Yeah, definitely. I probably hadn't really considered it too much before this happened, but because like Olympic Games, and then in 2022 there's the Commonwealth Games again, but it's in Birmingham, which is a bit different to the Gold Coast a couple of years ago, but like it's a home games, which obviously is unreal. So that would be really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 15s is definitely on my radar now. Used to play it obviously before going into sevens at university and at school, so I'm excited by that potential challenge if something comes along, but we'll see. And like I'm even exploring possibilities of going abroad, playing abroad, whether that be in obviously France, or people talk about America, so because that's quite cool in itself as well. You get the changing culture, the changing lifestyle. So yeah, 15s could happen, we'll see.
And you say you played 15s throughout all your childhood, really. How come you decided to specialise in sevens?
Yeah, it was a bit of a random one. Like I hadn't really played it for sort of 3 or 4 years since leaving school, going to uni, and then an opportunity came up once I'd finished the 15 season at Loughborough, end of my final year. So I was kind of ready for the next chapter of whatever that may be with rugby, and I thought. Basically an old coach of mine at Loughborough was running a sevens team in the summer, and he said, we just had someone drop out. Do you fancy a game? And I was like, yeah, decent. I'll get chucked involved. And obviously the weather's usually pretty good when sevens is around, like the sun's out, and playing in the summer. So I think it was sevens in the city at Allianz Park where Saracens play. And happened to be that Simon Amor, who's our current England sevens coach, was helping out with the team. And I went along, and it went pretty well. And next thing you know, I was invited down to train with them, and went all right, and got invited to go to a couple of European tournaments, got a contract off the back of it. So it wasn't really on my radar, but I think I just chose, like, obviously the lifestyle's epic with all the travelling around the locations, and it's a fun sport. Like there's freedom to play.
Yeah, literally.
You throw the ball around. It's quite like similar to student rugby, which I was coming off the back of, where you just, like I say, there's license to just experiment with your styles, and like where you just chuck the ball around from anywhere, ambitious style of play. So those sevens and like that, my experience of student rugby kind of went hand in hand. So I was pretty excited at the prospect, and I think I was like, 21, travel the world. I was like, yeah, it sounds all right.
Sign me up.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't have the ability or the pace really, but if I did, I think I'd probably choose sevens.
There's always space, I don't know, like water boy or something.
You get me a gig as a water boy. I'd love
that. Mate, it's a glamorous job around the world, but we all need them.
So yeah, you've obviously played sevens in Australia. I think that was your first tournament, but you've been to Cape Town Sevens, Hong Kong, LA. Where would you say has been the best place you've played?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you can never sort of sometimes look past your first cap, which was the Gold Coast, Australia for me, which was mad, and it was crazy as well. It was like the same week as my birthday, so we took off on like October the 1st, and I knew my birthday was, my birthday's October the 3rd, so I was like, right, I'm flying out to Gold Coast, Australia, make my debut. But it just so happened that as we took off, obviously the length of the flight, we basically flew through my birthday. Lost my birthday in transit. So I had like an hour of my birthday, I think, in like Singapore airport or somewhere, and then we just flew through. It was like October the 4th or something stupid when we landed. I was like, sound.
Get the beers in on the plane.
Yeah. But yeah, Gold Coast was obviously wicked. Like,
what a place to start. That's class.
Yeah, unreal. The beaches there are just mental. Went back there for the Commonwealth Games, but Cape Town is epic. I love going there. I've been fortunate enough to play there like 5 or 6 times, and we won there in 2016, beating South Africa in the final, which
they're
is just
mad for sevens, aren't they?
Yeah, like we played in the Cape Town Stadium. It's like 55,000, and it was sellout crowd that year.
It's crazy.
Playing South Africa in the final was just wild. So that's wicked. And like you're on the beach in the summer, but then also like Vancouver. Funnily enough, Canada isn't obviously considered much of a rugby nation, but they put on such a good tournament. It's indoors, so the noise is crazy, and they've got this like screen above you, which is the size of like a football pitch. It's mental. So there's just, I think each location's so unique. Sometimes it's really hard to put your finger on what your favourite, but probably Cape Town or Vancouver, I'd say, are probably up there. And then obviously there's like the obvious one, which is London, where you get all your friends and family are able to come along, and you get like a massive turnout, and you see all your your mates in the stands like absolutely hammered in stupid fancy dress, and you're warming up at the end of the pitch and they're screaming your name. You're just like, yeah, cool lads, just gonna go.
I feel like a day out at the Sevens is just a properly good day out.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
Exactly.
I know. I'm really looking forward to like whenever it comes along, being able to go enjoy it as a punter as well.
Yeah.
Just like, this is what everyone was having a crack with in the stands. Just legless.
And you've mentioned your debut there down on the Gold Coast. What was it like, that stepping out onto the pitch, putting on that England jersey for the first time?
Absolutely terrifying. Yeah, because it was in like 2 minutes of the first game kicking off, playing against Argentina. It was like 35-degree heat, and I was like, oh, and they called me on. I was like, oh my god, I'm actually going to go on now. And I had a shocker. I think I like made a couple carries, gave like 2 tries away, threw some dodgy offloads. And we lost the game, and then Simon, our head coach, like absolutely hammered us after the game, and I was just sat there like, oh no, this is my England career over. Obviously, just completely catastrophized everything. I was thinking, God, this is a nightmare. But then we went on to win a bronze medal, like lost to Fiji in the semi-final, and then beat South Africa. Came third in my first tournament.
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, it's not
Yeah,
all bad. Like, I had a rocky start, but like make up for it. So yeah, I mean, it was crazy, and then after the tournament we get presented with our sevens caps, which obviously that's a really special moment, like with the whole team, say a few words and then they just shut you down, like shout in your face, like sit down as soon as you start saying anything. But yeah, that's something that will stick with me for a long time. Obviously that was a dream of mine from a young age to represent England as a professional rugby player. So when that cap was handed over to me, I've got it framed. I actually put it up today on my wall, so framed at home, which is something that will just stick with me forever.
Yeah, I bet that's the moment when you think, wow, I'm actually an international sportsman. When you've got that cap in your hand, like, this is just surreal.
I know, it's like, even if that had been my first and only tournament, like I still essentially tick that box. Like no one can ever take that away from you, whether you go on and have a 10-year long career or 1 year long career. You'll always have that name as like an England rugby player. So yeah, it was just pretty spectacular, to be honest.
I think the thing with sevens that's so good is obviously you go to those places like Australia and South Africa, like the place where you go if you're playing 15, but then you also go to like places like you're saying, like Vancouver and Dubai and places like that, just that are sort of new to rugby.
Yeah, and that's also kind of the beauty of sevens, is you get some pretty rogue nations as well playing on the World Series, because there is like relegation and promotion. So sometimes, especially at Hong Kong, you watch like the qualifier for the teams trying to come up onto the World Series, and you've got like South Korea, Zimbabwe, Uganda, Chile, like really random nations. But when you go to Dubai and places like that, it's just such a festival atmosphere, and it's just wicked. So even like locations like that, they do such a great job of promoting the sport, and everyone wants to just live off the hype and just have some fun. And I think that's why I've enjoyed it so much, and why the punters do too, because it's just it's always such a sick atmosphere.
I think it's great to grow rugby outside of its sort of traditional borders as well, like in those sort of emerging nations. It's a great introduction to rugby, and it's going to just attract fans all over the world, which is really nice.
Well, it's just kind of like, although it's obviously apart from the 7 players and the 7 minutes a half, like it's all the same, but it's like stripped back because there's so much more space. It's much easier to follow. Like you don't have to worry so much about there being loads of stoppages of scrums and lineouts, and even if there is a scrum or lineout, they're over pretty quickly. Like it's pretty much in and out, and then before you know it, the ball's just in play, and it's much easier to follow than, I guess, 15-a-side, where there's kind of all the nuances and there's offsides and forward passes, which you don't really get so much. I guess
also because it's such a short game, you can get quite a lot of upsets as well, because it can just turn like that. Yeah,
we've been on the receiving end of a few of them, and it's like, it's brutal, and you watch them all the time, and people are always looking out for them, and I think that's just, like you say, that's what makes it attractive, because games can turn around and just
like a couple of errors and then complete upset.
Yeah, because everything's under the microscope. So, like next thing you know, New Zealand have lost to Japan, and it's like, it's mad. Yeah. But then you get into the semi-finals, and if New Zealand have lost a game, it means that one side of the draw is loaded. So you get like 4 top nations on one side. But that's then great, because sometimes it might mean like Canada then make a World Series final, which then is great exposure for them and their team and their players and rugby in Canada. So it's epic.
So you had the Gold Coast, and then sort of, what was it on from then? You just did a few more tournaments around the world?
Yeah, so Gold Coast, that was when it used to be 9 tournaments. So it was
Okay.
9 tournaments, and Gold Coast was standalone. So that was, whereas now it's 10 tournaments. They're in like 5 pairs. So we came back from that, and then the next 2 were Dubai and Port Elizabeth in South Africa. And I didn't get selected for Dubai. Went out and played in like our academy team. And then we moved on to Port Elizabeth, where I got selected, played there, which is again like a pretty wicked place to play, just somewhere else in South Africa. And then like normal kind of Christmas break, and then after the Christmas would have been, this was when it was Wellington and Vegas were paired together, so you'd fly to Wellington and then play to Vegas. And that was kind of when I had like, I guess I felt like I was really starting to make my stamp on the team, even though I'd only been in the squad like a few months, and selection was coming up for Wellington, and I felt like I'd fully deserved to be part of the squad. And obviously naturally with sport, like selection doesn't always go your way, and I found out that I wasn't going, and I was quite upset by it. And the coach said to me like, you should be upset, like it's a hard decision for me to make, but like you should be upset. So that was kind of good to sort of still get that reassurance that I wasn't just being left out because I wasn't good enough. But I eventually got called out to Vegas, so played in Vegas, which was
not bad, is it?
Not bad. And also like usually after the second week of tournament, because you'd been away for like 2 or 3 weeks, teams go out after at the second location. So I went out for Vegas, and that was the end of the tour. So we had a night out in Vegas afterwards, and that was just everything you think you can think of. It wasn't that. It was just it was mad. Like 7 a.m. getting casinos, the works basically.
Scene from The Hangover.
Yeah, exactly. So that was mad.
I think there's like a stereotype of sevens players, like a really finely tuned athlete, but you obviously still have nights out in Vegas.
Totally. Like I think that's the beauty of, like, I mean, obviously there are some sportsmen and women that are so highly tuned and like take so much detail in what they do, but like rugby goes hand in hand with like that social aspect, doesn't it? So, and sometimes when you've been away for 3 weeks, and in the lead up to those 3 weeks you've had like a 6-week training block, you've got to let loose, and rugby players are pretty good at letting loose sometimes. So you've got to enjoy it whilst you can, because when might you get the opportunity to like be in Vegas and have some beers? But after that I picked up a hamstring injury, which was kind of like my first long-term injury with the sevens. So I didn't play again that year, which was pretty rough, especially as that was kind of quite a pivotal time in the season. Like contracts were being renewed, and I was only on a 1 year, so I was, I guess, quite worried about whether I'd get offered another contract. Had I made enough of an impression? But fortunately I had, and although I didn't play anymore that year, like I got offered another contract, which was pretty cool. So that was a bit of a whirlwind year, first year in there. Yeah.
Talking of like sevens players being finely tuned, I was obviously doing the little deep dive on the Instagram before we were chatting, and I saw you chatting to Brian O'Driscoll, and I kind of in a way don't know how you did it, because even watching it made me nervous. You know, there's his face, he's waiting for you to come on. I was so nervous watching it.
Yeah, that was, I mean, he's just a legend, isn't he? So I was kind of like, someone from HSBC said, we'd like to see an Instagram live with Brian O'Driscoll. I was like, yeah, cool, he's like one of my idols when I was growing up, and having to log in and tune in with him and just start doing a Q&A, it's like...
You're like, hi Brian.
Yeah, hi Brian. Yeah. But then like, I think sometimes it's cool to recognise that obviously he was an idol of mine, but at the same time I have to think about, like I was saying earlier, the platform I have as an athlete. Like obviously people are then looking to me as, I'm not putting myself in the same sort of quota as Brian O'Driscoll, but like still have an influence in terms of what I'm speaking about, and the platform we were on, HSBC Sport, and talking about a Death Zone session with England Sevens. That was crazy.
Yeah, mad. Yeah, and talking of that platform, obviously you've obviously spoken a lot about the mental side of sport, and obviously sort of, was it about a year in, you had obviously quite a setback with everything that happened with your dad, and what was that like what was the impact of that like, knowing that obviously it's a really difficult thing to go through, but at the same time you're playing such elite level sport. It's sort of, in a way, sport doesn't wait for anyone. Did you have the sort of same amount of time to grieve and go through the same things?
Yeah, so like you say, sport is, well, as everyone knows, like sport is a business, especially when you're in like the professional setup, and you're often on fixed term contracts, so you don't know when like your next contract might be or when your last game might be, especially when it comes to injuries. But yeah, so it was like November 2015, my dad died from leukemia, which obviously he'd been diagnosed like 2 years prior to that, and it's something that I was having to, I guess, manage the load of whilst going through the end of my university career and then into the start of my sevens career, which alongside like all the demands of now being a professional athlete, now living in London, like away from home, the commitment I was having to put into like nutrition, exercise, sleep, all those things that come with being a professional athlete and ultimately like performing well. And yeah, so when my dad did die in 2015, it was I guess it was just one of those moments that you're kind of you got one route or another essentially, and it's, well, I guess there's plenty of options you can take, but it was like go down the route of just kind of crumbling and letting this take over my life and essentially have such a damaging effect on my professional rugby, or kind of take it by the scruff of the neck and look at how I can try and make the best of a shit situation. Shit situation, is that all right?
That's fine.
Yeah. Don't know who the listeners are. Yeah.
We've only got a few. So
Yeah.
My mum's heard all before.
Yeah. So yeah, that was, and you talk about like what you're saying about kind of grieving and stuff, and that was literally the start of the season. I think Dubai was was supposed to be in a week's time when my dad died, and so I was kind of like just at a complete crossroads in terms of, right, do I continue to keep playing and try and just chase the dream, or do I need to take the time to process this all? And I didn't really probably give myself the time or the space to process it, and that was partly because I guess I didn't want to address like the pain and the uncomfortable feelings of what came with that, but also I just wanted to use rugby as like my coping mechanism and that vehicle, because that was something like me and my dad shared so much. We had passion and like love for the game, and he was my coach for so many years up until about the age of 17. So for me, throwing myself back into rugby just felt like the right thing to do, and felt like that's what he would want me to do. So I hadn't experienced grief before, so I was just kind of going off of instinct, and like felt whatever came natural to me, that was the route I was going to take. And it just so happened that I decided to, after like the funeral and processing stuff with family, that I felt like I wanted to just attack it head on. And in 6 months' time as well, it was the Rio Olympics. So I was like, that's something I wanted to go to, and if I don't sort of just get into it now, then I'm going to miss the boat. And like you said, sport doesn't wait around for you. Like they've got performances and like goals that they want to meet, and like someone will take my place if I'm not there to be a part of it. So it was a real real difficult situation, and like some decisions to make, and wrong decisions, right decisions. I don't regret them, because obviously they got me to where I was and where I am now, but like maybe some could have been dealt with like a little bit better than others. So
I guess when you go through something as devastating as that, it probably is nice to have a goal that you set yourself so that you stay motivated, because otherwise I guess you can get quite demotivated, and you sort of just sit around and don't do anything, and just sort of let that grief overcome you. So it's nice to have something to work towards, I guess.
I think just that having that fixed mindset on something that was so motivating for me definitely helped me I guess feel like my life was still together in a way, even though my dad wasn't around to kind of guide me and help me make such big decisions, because obviously something like that, usually you got to look for advice, and my mum and sister were obviously having to deal with their own emotions and everything that comes with a death in the family. And but yeah, it certainly helped me in terms of like focusing on something, but at the same time it also meant that I kind of brushed a lot of things to the side and didn't really take as much time and space as I could have to process thoughts, emotions, feelings. So it's a good thing, but also you have to understand like the kind of, it can be quite toxic as well if you don't sort of balance it out, but it certainly helps. You can just use those things like as a like you say, like a motivating factor. Like you can just turn it into like proper fuel. And that's for me, that's what helped me get, I think, a massive reason for why I was able to get to Rio in 2016. Because I was just like, I made a promise to my dad and myself, like the night he died, I was like, I'm going to go to the Olympics, I'm going to be an Olympian. And for me, I feel like that was a huge reason as to why I was able to achieve that. although it was obviously, I had to go through such a painful experience to be able to do that, and who knows, I may still have gone there and done that, but at the same time, like, it just added fuel to the fire, and it felt like nothing was going to stop me. I was going to achieve it no matter what. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, firstly, obviously, fair play to you for sort of speaking about the experiences, because it's obviously such a difficult thing to go through. But like you said, I'm sure it gave you that motivation, that why, like understanding why I'm doing it. And then that ultimately led you on to get selected for Rio.
Yeah, I think I probably was a bit naive before that in terms of like understanding why I was playing. Like, I think for a long time it'd always just been for the love of it, and which is obviously really important, because if you don't love what you're doing, then you shouldn't really be doing it. That's what I think anyway. And for me, there's still a massive motivator is just being able to enjoy it, especially when I'm playing with my mates. So for a number of years it was that, and then I guess I started to realise the power of other things you can use in your life that will help you achieve your goals. And for me, that was the I guess I saw it as making my dad proud, and people used to tell me like, he'll be proud of you no matter what, and I can see that now. But when I was in that like thick cloud fogginess, I was just like, if I don't do this, like I've let him down, I've let myself down. But certainly, like it helped me start to figure out like new motivators, new whys, and that's a journey I've been on even since then. Yeah. Like having to recognise that even that using my dad as a why, that starts to like be diluted as well as time goes on, and you have to change the way you think about things and readdress and reform those whys as well. So yeah, it's a learning journey and like a learning curve constantly going on, but like I feel like there is always good to come out of bad situations.
And so obviously you jumped back into sevens pretty soon after it, and you had the Olympics in your sights. What was it like being back in that dressing room environment? Were you open to talk about things, or because obviously a rugby dressing room can sometimes be just like full of banter and people cracking jokes and stuff. What was it like being back a part of that environment?
I mean, it was exciting because everyone had this shared goal of going to the Olympics, so there was a lot of buzz around that, a lot of energy being put into that shared goal. And I remember the first time I went back to the sevens, I think basically Simon, our head coach, had come to Bristol to see me and my family and said, look, if you want to come back up and see everyone, then you're more than welcome to. And he said, if you want to get involved in training, obviously you can, but just see how you feel on the day. And I remember getting involved in a training session. It happened to be like our death zone session, which is the hardest session like of the week usually. But it just gave me that escape. Like for that time when I was on the pitch, like I didn't have anything else to worry about except for rugby and just playing. And I think certainly the boys were conscious of like what I was going through. The management were obviously aware, and wanted to make sure that my headspace was okay, because they said if you want to come out to Dubai and Cape Town, like we want you to be part of the team, but say you get out there and you don't feel like you're in the right mindset, then don't worry about it, we'll fly you home. So everyone was really accommodating of the fact that I was obviously going through this grief with me and my family, but at the same time they wanted to provide adequate support so that if I did sort of need to take time away, then I could. But I don't know, naturally I think people just, without addressing the subject, wanted to be as normal with me as possible, and that was probably through the avenue of like having a bit of banter, laughter, taking the piss out of someone's haircut, or like
no point in me.
Joel's totally insecure now.
The pressure
shaking.
Don't worry, it's not like we've got 3 cameras all on you.
But I think it's just like people naturally like, especially because those kind of subjects can be a bit awkward and you're very conscious of people's emotions and you don't want to upset them. But like I've said to people, and something I've learned is that often, even when it's so raw and so fresh, like people do seek those like avenues of like speaking up and wanting to talk about the topic or whatever they've just gone through, even if it is just to be like, I'm just finding things really hard today, or that it's not necessarily always about going in deep and having a counselling session with that person. It's more just being like, like it's really hard, I miss my dad, or I'm not really sure what I'm going to do next. So those sorts of things. But everyone was so good to me. They just gave me space to take my time, but also acknowledge the fact that if I wanted to get straight back into rugby, which I did, then they were fully supportive of it. But I remember flying out to Cape Town, and I was obviously been through like death of my dad, and naturally everyone brings around like cakes and flowers and trying to cook food for us and stuff to just help us make our lives easier. And I'd certainly eat my fair share of cakes, and we got out to Cape Town, it was like 30 degrees, and Halsey, our S&C coach at the time, was like, right, we're going to have to, obviously you've missed a few weeks of training, so you might have to do a few extras at the end of training. So I was doing some fitness top-ups, and I was just hanging mess. Like, I wish I'd never eaten all that cake. But yeah, so I mean, well, and then my mum and sister flew out for that tournament, so soon after my dad's death that they were like, we want a bit of an escape from ourselves, because everything is just so overwhelming, like constantly having people asking you questions, or you're trying to organise a funeral and stuff. So they came out and watched me play in Cape Town, which was a pretty I guess perfect way of I don't know, closing things, whatever it may be. But yeah, that was a nice way to sort of spend some time together.
I think sevens, maybe more than other sports, because you always on tour with everyone, it's such a small squad, you're probably really close-knit, almost like your brothers, so it must have been nice having them to support you whilst you're going through that tough time. Did you feel like you could talk to them?
Yeah, certainly. I remember, like I said earlier about my debut in Gold Coast, like my dad was going through pretty heavy treatment at that point, and I remember being out in Gold Coast and like FaceTiming him on and showing him the surroundings and being so excited, and he was obviously excited for me, and if he could have been, he would have been there to watch me and witness it, but he couldn't. But yeah, like, because we spend so much time away on tour, we're a full-time sevens team, like we're constantly in and out of training, in each other's pockets, sharing rooms on tour. Like, you go on that emotional roller coaster with people, with the highs and lows of winning, losing, injury, rehab, all those sorts of things. So you have a lot of shared experiences, which really helps. And I think that's one thing that I've taken a lot of value from, like within our sevens team, is often someone else has experienced something similar to what you're going through, and if you need to, like an ear for someone else to listen to what you're, I don't know, potentially suffering from or enjoying, in fact, like or methods of coping, like there's often someone there, and the boys are kind of more than open and willing to sort of make themselves available to you, which is just I've benefited from, and it's really important, I think, in that team environment where obviously it's so high pressure, but you have to remember as well, like obviously you guys doing this podcast, there are people behind those players, like human beings that are experiencing emotions like any other normal person. Just because they're a high performance athlete doesn't mean that they're like emotionless. So that was like, I'm really grateful to have had that support network throughout my time.
And then it must have not made it sweeter, but then finally getting picked for GB must have just been absolutely amazing after.
Yeah. How did you actually get selected? Like, how does that work?
So actually, like 2 months after I was playing in Sydney, and I tore ligaments in my ankle, so I had ankle surgery. So I was like, well, that's not a good start. Like, grieving my dad and then rehabbing the ankle, where you're just like thrown into like the daily routine of that, which is pretty intense. Like, that has a mental fatigue as well as physical fatigue, and I was worrying even more now about making the Olympics. But anyway, got back fit and like probably played some of my best rugby for what at the time was like a wider squad of English, Scottish and Welsh players. There was like probably, I think it was a squad of about 30, split into 2 squads, and we went to team competitions around Europe. On a few occasions played against each other, which was pretty cool. Like, you've got both teams going head to head.
It must be a bit weird though, thinking like you're competing for one jersey.
Yeah. It was quite daunting, but like, it's some of the best rugby I've ever been involved in, because everyone is obviously they're in that squad for a reason. Like, there's some of the best players in their position within Great Britain, and everyone's pushing for Olympic spot. So the competitiveness and the like performance levels was just through the roof. So when we played against each other, it was pretty cutthroat. Like, people didn't hold back, especially like obviously it's you against that man, and you want that shirt, and he wants that shirt also. So who's going to win the battle? But Yeah, fortunate. It was like a when it came to actual selection, it was like a list, and your time and your name, and they had like 10-minute gaps, so you didn't cross over with anyone. And fortunately, I was pretty early on the list, so I was like just nervous, like sweaty palms walking in. I was like, God. I wasn't confident, but I was very happy with how I'd performed, and I was like, I guess whatever the outcome of this is, like, I feel like I've done whatever I can to put myself in the best position possible, so I was proud of that. But yeah, I walked in, and Simon and Babs, the Welsh, who was assistant head coach to Simon, I guess they were pretty just like, as soon as I sat down, it was kind of pretty quick. It's like, you guys sat opposite me now, they were like, I can't remember what they said, but it's like, said something about like how impressed they'd been, and then like, you're going to the Olympics, like you're part of the 12, you want to be part of the 12.
How did you react?
Did
you try and play it cool?
I think I don't know, I was just so overwhelmed. Like, I think I just immediately, a massive smile came across my face, and you almost have to double take, be like, can you say that again? Like, am I sure I heard you right? Because obviously just like in a bit of a whirlwind, but yeah, it was mental. And they said we were part of the 12, right? Because we were taking 2 travelling reserves as well, so it was like actually a 14-man squad, but I was part of the actual 12 that were going to take the field, and I was just like, and obviously so many emotions started to come back about like the relationship with me and my dad, and the promise I'd made to myself and him, and all the hard work before that with injuries, him dying, like me and my mum, my sister, and all those sort of associations I'd made with the whole journey. And so I rang my mum straight away, and she was in the post office, and I remember her like kind of, I don't know what she did, but it sounded like she passed out or screamed or like dropped to the deck or something. But she was just like so proud of me, and obviously wanted to remind me how proud my dad would have been of me as well. And yeah, I just remember kind of, it was just a total roller coaster. It was like full spectrum. I was like overwhelmed. I was also like so devastated that I couldn't speak to him and tell him. So I was upset, I was happy, I was...
Relief.
Yeah, relief, exactly, all of the above. But yeah, and that was when it was Sevens was making its debut at the Olympics. It was
the whole world's eyes was on Sevens.
Yeah, and like before that it was the World Series, now it's the Olympic Games, and like you say, the whole world was ready to witness it, and I was like, yeah, this is kind of cool.
What was the build up to the Olympics like? Like for me, even little things like getting the stash just must be crazy.
Mate, that was one of the best days of my life, because we went up to Birmingham. We knew we were going to go for the kissing out, and you hear about the stories, and Adidas were doing it, and I think that year they'd done a collaboration with Stella McCartney. So you're like, in fact, this gear is going to be pretty sharp. And we got up there, and it was just us, and it was like a massive warehouse, and there was like a shoe section, which was like going into like JD Sports, like trainers, just a wall of trainers, and you could pick like your size in 3 or 4 different styles. And then there was like bespoke suits over here. Then there was just like random bits, like you could go and get like your name engraved on a golden spoon from Kellogg's. You're all given like airport
Why would you
trolleys.
ever need that?
Exactly.
I'd be taking everything.
I was taking everything. I was like, I'll
kid
have
in a
it.
candy shop. I'll have that, please.
There was all sorts, and it was like Kia were there as like a car sponsor, which we didn't get a car, but like that was a crazy day. So that's when obviously the media storm starts to blow up as well. Like we got verified on Twitter and Instagram, like those sorts of things. The famous blue tick and those sort of things. You're like, wow, this is real, and like you just kid in a candy store, because you can tell, like, I can't even sort of speak just about it now as well.
I remember that like sort of week on Instagram, there's that picture where it's like from the top and you've got all your kit laid out. I remember seeing so many of them, thinking that's just so sick.
I think I just wouldn't take the stash off. I'd just go to sleep in it all.
That's what it felt like. It was just so unique, like nothing I'd felt before. And there was photos all around the warehouse of like the Team GB poster boys, and Tom Mitchell, our Sevens captain, was one of them, so we'd obviously taken the mick out of him, like being on the posters. But there was like Dino Asher-Smith, like the Brownlee brothers, all those sorts of things. You're like, wow, I'm actually part of this team, like, and the caliber of people involved. You're like, wow, this is sick. Yeah,
that's the thing about Team GB is like, you're not just part of a rugby team, you're literally part of like, your Chris Hoys, like your Mo Farahs, like all those kind of people.
Proper,
like, have all been before you.
Yeah, legends of British sport. We're part of that. That team, and it is like a family. And I remember we went to like the kind of official Rugby Sevens announcement. We went to like the embassy in London, and you meet like the head of Team GB, and you get sent like a confirmation letter with the stamp at the top. It's all those sorts of things. It's like, wow, you're part of like a family essentially, and like a long history of athletes. So yeah, it was amazing. Crazy times.
Yeah. So then you flew out to Rio?
Yeah. Well, not actually quite. We flew out to Belo Horizonte, which is like where our holding camp was. So we didn't fly straight into the village. So that was like an hour's north. But yeah, like I said, there again, there was sprinters there was swimmers, like all different sports, and we had our big kind of mini athletes village, I guess, and that was when it started to I guess hit home even more. Like every day spent in kit, meetings, talking, like media interviews, and then also just like bumping into athletes, having a chat with them asking like how preparation's going. And Rugby Sevens was getting a fair bit of like recognition, because obviously it was new and people were like, oh, this is kind of cool. And obviously the boys were just hyped for it, really excited at the prospect, but it didn't exactly go to plan for me. Basically like, what was it, 2 days before competition, it was just like wicked week in the lead up, training going well, gym going well. We were like 2 days due to fly into the Olympic Village, competition start. I can't remember who our group was, but obviously you got New Zealand, South Africa, Fiji, top teams there. I think that was the year when Sonny Bill Williams had come onto the circuit to be part of it, so he was in the New Zealand squad. Cheslin Colby was part of the South Africa squad. Who else? Like Tuisova and Nakarawa were playing for Fiji, so like proper 15 stars, and we were just our typical Team GB selves, just off the World Series. But yeah, just due to fly into the Olympic Village, we were doing like our last gym session, and I was doing box jumps with some of the boys, and as I came down, I caught my edge on caught my ankle on the edge of the box like that, and just rolled it over and proceeded, like all my weight just fell through my ankle, dislocated it. And
I mean, some players are injury prone,
yeah.
But for you it just seems like that's bad luck. Like you can't foresee that happening.
I know, no, not at all. And that was like I went on that journey in terms of like mindset and kind of questioning like, why has this happened to me? What's like, am I just not made for rugby? But I guess that was pretty plain to see, like it was just pure bad luck. And my ankle just like blew up, massive swelling, bruising, taken straight to hospital, painkillers, leg put in a cast, sent back to the hotel on crutches, and all the other athletes and the teams are just looking at me like, mate, you've got this all wrong, you're getting injured now. But like, as I said about earlier, when the England Sevens, when I was going through grief with my dad and the England boys, but like again, the Team GB lads, because obviously that was made up of a few Scottish and Welsh boys, like they'd known what I'd gone through previously, also with my dad, because we'd spoken about that and our own individual journeys as part of like the unitedness of our Team GB team. But like they immediately obviously all got around me and tried to support me as much as possible, and recognised that it was pretty rough going. But yeah, I think at first I wasn't really able to process it, because it was just, everything happened so quickly.
You go from 100 of the excitement of the Olympic Games to 0 so quickly, and it's just like, with everything you've been through, it's just like, why you again?
Totally.
It must have been horrible.
It was. I just, obviously it still sticks out in my mind. Like, you have to kind of laugh about it now, because like at the time I did a fair bit of sort of crying and emotional sort of searching, soul searching. But certainly, it was just like, how has this happened?
So you had to fly back home to Bristol.
Yeah. So when we were due to fly into the Olympic Village, I was on the same flight, Olympic Village. I basically got a connecting flight home to Heathrow. I mean, it wasn't all bad. I got to fly home first class. Like, so that was
small wins.
Like champagne sipping whilst like pretty dosed up on painkillers. So I was having a pretty good time. I was making the most of. It was a pretty tough situation, but that was rough. Like, and then came home, had surgery in London. Mum came and picked me up, brought me back to Bristol. Obviously, wanted to watch the Olympic Games regardless of whether I was involved in it or not. And then the team went on to win a silver medal, which was hard. Like, I was completely mixed emotions. I guess pretty bittersweet.
happy for them, but a bit jealous in a way as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like felt I deserved to be there, sharing that kind of experience with them, but like I wasn't angry, but I was obviously just like, damn, like that's I'm missing out here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, just massive achievement, because Team GB were kind of nobody's going into the tournament, like weren't really considered to be medal hopes, and so I mean, as I've said to loads of people, and people said to me, like, I could have been a gold medal. So yeah,
if you'd been there, it'd been straight gold.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the next one. We'll pick up a gold somewhere else.
I guess, did it make you more motivated to get to Tokyo 2020?
Yeah, I that wasn't initially, I guess, my first like idea of what's next, because between 2016 and 2020 was like a Commonwealth Games and a Sevens World Cup, so I started focusing on those sorts of things, and obviously also had to get back fit first with my ankle. But yeah, certainly immediately sprung to mind. I was like, right, this is a box I'm still kind of yet to tick, even though people say that obviously you were part of that squad and you always will be, which I can understand. Like, it still doesn't really sit with me comfortably that I'd never actually made it onto the pitch. So that, yeah, for me, that's certainly something that I'm looking forward to. Well, I was looking forward to this year, but now it's changed lanes to next year. But we just move on, we adapt.
How have you managed to stay so motivated? Like, you've had all of these setbacks, like what happened with your dad and these terrible injuries. How do you, when you get a bad injury like that and you are straight back to square one, how do you get the motivation to do all the rehab again? Like, how have you stayed so resilient?
I haven't always. Like, it's not been as kind of, I guess, sweet or straightforward as maybe I'm talking about it sometimes. There's certainly been, like, there's been some really dark times where I've questioned, like, I guess my biological makeup, like my physical body. Am I actually built to play rugby? Like, can my body withstand the demands of it? Questioning, like, why me? Like, I've got injured again. Am I doing something wrong? Can I be doing anything different? And you start to really kind of, I guess, doubt yourself and your preparation, which obviously is such a huge part of sport. So what has helped me so much, I think, I guess each time, I guess almost each injury is like a lesson in itself, and like that has kind of helped me in terms of, rather than just having one and that being it, you just learn from those experiences. So for me, it's been about like realizing even though you're going through like a 12-week rehab on your ankle, like whilst you're going through that 12 weeks, after 4 weeks you might be out of your boot or off your crutches, and that's like a small win. And like being really aware of those and kind of celebrating them. So like, it's
a goalpost you can aim for.
Yeah, exactly. Be like, right, I've ticked that box, I'm going to go out and have like some beers on Friday with my mates just to like celebrate that win, because that's an achievement in itself. Like, obviously there's still a long way to go, but you have to remember, like, success isn't just from like A to B. There's like all sorts of ups and downs along the way, and it's not as straightforward as just like going in doing your ankle proprioception or your weights. There's so much more to it. And yeah, I mean, we're really lucky that how well we get looked after with our management, so they recognise when, like, maybe I've come in and they can tell like my mood and my motivation's a bit low. They might be like, right, let's have 2 days off and just go away, or have a long weekend away or something like that. So that's where I guess the people around you are really important, not just the physios and the coaches, but like your friends and your family, who you can go to and be like, this is like, I'm finding this hard, or I need a break for a bit. Can we speak about whatever it may be? Because it's just as mentally fatiguing as it is physically, if not even more mentally fatiguing than it is physically, I guess.
I think didn't the RFE offer you a like a psychologist to chat to as well?
Yeah.
Did that help?
Yeah, we've had one pretty much. I think she came on board pretty much my whole time with the Sevens. So she went on that whole journey of like understanding grief and the rehab process and that. So just having, I guess, that independent, safe space was really helpful, because I knew that unless I gave her permission, like, nothing was going to be shared beyond me and her. And she just made me, I was just comfortable. Like, it wasn't always necessarily about sitting down and having like proper therapy and trying to unpack like the thoughts and feelings and emotions. It was more just like a chat and time for me to unload, like, I guess, the baggage that I had. And it took me a fair bit of time to do that, and she had to like chip away and ask those questions and probe and whatnot. And I think for a long time I was pretty resistant to it because I just recognised that behind whatever I was going to say was going to be like, it was going to be painful, and I didn't want to experience that. So I was like, if I just sort of bat off these and just like defend, maybe she'll stop asking questions. But she could tell that I was just basically doing that. So she managed to help me with that. But she's like so beneficial. Katie Warriner has just been like, I guess a bit of a, I don't want to say lifesaver because that sounds like she literally saved my life, but like I think it could have gone like taken a completely different route if it wasn't for having someone like that who was genuinely just so invested in my like well-being as a person rather than a player, like because she recognised like if AJ as the human being is in a good place, then the rugby player will be in a good place also, and it was more about that rather than being like figuring out performance aspects. So yeah, she's been just like unreal, and I guess I think of her more as like a lifelong friend now rather than just a psychologist.
Yeah, I think like most, so obviously we've spoken to a few sports people and a lot of them say about that support network, just like the comfort of someone there, even if it's like, yeah, like a friend or, you know, someone like the psychiatrist that you just have that comfort with, and can help so much. Yeah,
and she just made me feel comfortable, and I remember one particular session we were just due to have like a catch up and have a chat. We hadn't said, or I hadn't said to her like, can we talk about how I switch on for games or switch off for games? It was just like, can we have a catch up? And this is when I was probably going through a pretty dark time, and she was just like, it was like we had just sat down now. We just sat down at the end of the day, and she said like, how's things going? And I went to be like, yeah, okay, and just completely just broke down, just emotional, like started crying, couldn't get any words out, and that was just evidence of my actions beforehand of just like bottling things up, like holding on to all that baggage, which she'd obviously been trying to get out of me, and she always knew that I guess that day was going to come at some point, but she just wanted for it to come naturally, and then for me able to recognise the fact or the I guess the health benefits of it, and immediately afterwards I felt like totally liberated. I was like, I could go out and run a marathon right now. It's unreal. But yeah, that support network I think is so important, and it's not like I said, it's not necessarily people trying to make you say something that you're not ready to say, but just allowing you space to feel comfortable enough to be able to do it.
We think it's so great how open you are talking about all this stuff, because too often athletes try and put on a front, they want to on the exterior look strong, and they don't want to be talking about mental health and that sort of stuff. So it's great that you're being able to use your platform to talk about it and sort of promote these discussions, because that is important, isn't it? And like too often as a fan, you look at athletes and you think of them as just sort of robots, but actually there's so much going on in their heads, and that is just as important as their physical attributes as well.
There's much more depth to people than I guess you see on the TV or in the papers, and you can't always take things at face value, and that's kind of what I've gone on in terms of what I think we spoke about earlier, like my reforming of my why. Like I started to realise that just using my dad as a motivation wasn't sort of enough anymore, and I was having to think about, and this was at a time when I was potentially considering retirement, because I'd had like 3 or 4 surgeries on the bounce, like my shoulder last year, almost had to retire from that, so I was kind of really questioning whether I was going to have to give up rugby, like a lifelong dream, kind of earlier than I was hoping to. And so just using my dad as the reason to carry on wasn't enough anymore, and so part of that was like saying about making mental health a more spoken about subject, and like how can I essentially be a role model for like my peers, the people around me, like not just in my team but like also my friends, my family, and for me that's how I've been able to again find, I guess, not a new love, but like just an increased or just brought it back up again. Like the reason why I'm playing is now to still obviously enjoy it and love it, but also to kind of be essentially like a good role model for the people around me, and that's through the avenues of like you guys talking about mental health and resilience, grief, injury, all sorts really.
I think rugby, although it's obviously quite a macho sport, it is quite open to these sort of discussions, like sort of the characteristics of rugby. It's all about respect and fair play and honesty and integrity and stuff. And like, for example, when Gareth Thomas came out as gay, people received that really well within the rugby community. So I think it is quite progressive off the pitch, isn't it? And that hopefully means that people feel comfortable talking about mental health within rugby.
Yeah, I think so. Like, obviously, whenever you go to rugby matches, like the crowds often mix together, so there's never kind of usually that hostile environment between people, and rugby is quite an expressive sport. Like, you can be quite creative, and I think just a sport in general is great for that, like creating that space for people to be vulnerable, essentially be emotionally available, because you do have that shared experience of highs and lows. So you're going on journeys together constantly. So it's always a good, it's a great vehicle for like change and encouraging good characteristics in people and good behaviours.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Like, getting things out and sort of reforming things in your head, just like you said, it makes you feel like superpowers. Like, it makes you feel amazing.
Yeah.
It's no surprise that from sort of you addressing that, you then obviously went on to do a lot of really good things in the future, like in the years following. So it's no surprise. Like, it's direct correlation.
I think, and like even when it was times when I didn't really know what to do, just as simple as like writing thoughts and feelings down, like just almost getting them out of your head and onto paper. Like, yeah, they're still potentially bubbling around, but you've kind of been able to step back from it a little bit by just having it on a piece of paper, and that's one thing that I found has been helpful. And yeah, I mean, like I say, there's definitely been dark times when I haven't wanted to continue playing rugby, but at the same time, there's been massive moments of success. Like, went to a Commonwealth Games and won a bronze medal. I mean, like, to be involved again in a multi-sport event like that, represent Team England again, where you've got like major global athletes competing, like that was amazing, and to come away with a medal was even more special. And then we went to a Sevens World Cup in San Francisco and played in like the baseball stadium, which is just mental.
I saw that. Mad.
like it's just so unique, and like to having those moments of success reminds you why you're going through those dark periods, and like how much. I mean, obviously some people will decide at points to be like, you know, enough's enough, and sometimes you do have to step back and put your well-being first. But if you can, like, get through it and not surrender to like those dark periods and figure out a way through the sort of the fog, I guess, then you will be rewarded for it. Like, but yeah, there's been some great times.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like the sport just has the ability, doesn't it, to make you feel so amazing, but also stuff like Rio can literally do the complete opposite. So
yeah, I think that's probably what, as a kid, I was thinking of like complete stardom, but then you do realise that there is kind of highs and lows, and it can pick you up, but it can also like send you to the pits as well. But I think that's the beauty of it, and like it brings people together and it connects, and yeah, I think that's why everyone's like, people just love sport.
And when you go through those lows, it makes the highs even sweeter, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, you've obviously had a lot of highs. Like, you've won in the Cape Town Sevens, like beating South Africa in their own backyard. That's one of the biggest feats you can do in Sevens rugby. Then obviously, as you say, like the Sevens World Cup in San Francisco, unbelievable experience, and obviously a Commonwealth bronze medal.
Yeah.
Which out of those, or out of any of your Sevens experience, would you say has been the highlight?
I mean, yeah, those ones obviously spring to mind naturally, but there's always, like, I don't know why, I've always kind of enjoyed playing with some of the younger guys, like the academy team, and there's always one that sticks out. It was the Commonwealth Games year, and again, I'd been injured, so I was having to catch up on some rugby, and I went to Hong Kong with, like, we sent an academy team, and the senior squad flew out straight to Australia for the Commonwealths to basically start preparation a bit earlier, but I had to go to Hong Kong with like one or two other senior boys, Charlie Hayter and Will Edwards. And the rest of the squad was like young guys in their first year playing the Hong Kong Sevens, which is kind of considered to be like the pinnacle of Rugby Sevens. And we were playing Scotland on the Friday night, and it was like 8 p.m. Everyone piled out of work, like lit up the stadium. Scotland were fully loaded, like full Commonwealth Games team, and we were like young whippersnappers with a couple of old heads like me. And we just about, like, we lost them by like 2 points. Last play they scored, but like for me, that those kind of moments really stick out, because we had there was no expectation on us, but people everyone just got together, and there was, when we always talk about whenever we put that shirt on, obviously making England proud, and for me, despite losing, that's one thing that really sticks out in my memory is the attitude and the effort we as a squad had to just putting our best foot forward and making England proud. And the rest of the tournament for that weekend didn't go particularly well, and I didn't play much more because they wanted me on limited minutes for the Commonwealths. But for me, playing with those young guys, seeing them on such a big circuit express themselves and play some good rugby, that one for me really sticks out. And then obviously the wins in Cape Town and South Africa, the World Cup, and hopefully 2021 Olympics next year. That's the next big goal that hopefully will get an achievement, get a medal, come home with a medal.
It'll be gold this time.
Yeah, exactly.
And was the Commonwealth win with a few of the boys from Rio?
Yeah, so that was kind of why I think the Cape Town Sevens sticks out so much, and the Commonwealth, because quite a lot of the guys in both those squads were at the Rio Olympics and won the silver medal. So
must have made it pretty sweet.
Yeah, to have then that shared success with them, where I'd missed out on that enjoyment, I guess, and that celebration. We then we could share that together again. And the Commonwealth Games is just, well, for some sports it's actually the biggest thing, because some sports obviously aren't in the Olympics, but they're in the Commonwealth. So again, the hype around it's massive, and that was on the Gold Coast, Australia, where I'd made my debut. Unbelievable location for a Commonwealth Games, and to go there and come away with a medal was pretty surreal. When we lost to New Zealand in the final, which was obviously devastating because we knew we weren't going to get to play for the gold medal, but we still had a chance of medaling if we beat South Africa in the third, fourth playoff. And yeah, that whole moment where you go through, you have to put your tracksuit on and you go to the medal ceremony and you get asked and they're laying out the platforms, and the women got their medals before us, and then we get called up, and Team England get announced as bronze Commonwealth Games medalists, and you step onto the podium, you get given your little souvenir, and you get handed your medal, and you look down on it, and you have to take a moment to take it all in. And you look around,
proper pinch me moment.
Yeah, massively. And obviously I've got photos and stuff, and you're just and it's at home, just on one of my shelves. And even when I see it now, I'm just hang on, that's mine.
Does that belong to me?
Yeah, exactly. It's in this little presentation box, and I take it out sometimes. I was wow, this is sick. And I'll always have that with me. And so, yeah, to have that with the guys that went to Rio was
pretty special.
Yeah, really special.
I think we could literally talk for hours, I'm sure, but potentially sort of wrap it up there. I think it's been amazing chatting to you, Alex, and thanks so much for coming on. It's obviously a mad story, and your ability to be so open about it and so honest, that would definitely resonate with a lot of people. So thanks for doing that, mate. Yeah, and hopefully you're going to be selected for the Tokyo 2021, and we'll be able to watch you. Yeah, that's the dream, next year hopefully. But yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. It's been cool to be here and just chat things through. Really appreciate it, Alex. Nice one, mate.